I think for small business owners, it is a lot easier to grow a small business when the economy is booming and people are freely spending money. But when people start cutting back on things, you just have to know your client well enough to understand, like, is what your service provides considered a nice to have or a must have? Is it a vitamin or a painkiller? If it's a vitamin, it's a nice to have. They'll do it because they know over time, this is going to help me in my life, right? But it's not necessarily urgent, because if I don't do it today, I'll be fine. A painkiller offer is one that's, this is the Vicodin that you need when you just got really, really seriously hurt, right? You need it right now. It is urgent. And when we go into a downturn, usually the things that are considered the vitamin, the nice to haves, they start to get cut from people's spending. And this is where a lot of small business owners get scared, because they start thinking, well, people aren't spending any money. That's not true. People are always spending money. Okay. So don't make decisions about other people's wallets. People are always spending money.
Welcome to another episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. I'm your host, Omar Cumberbatch of OmarCumberbatch.com. As always, appreciate you jumping in and learning new stuff in the health coach space. And today we have a returning guest, which is a rarity, as everyone who listens to the show realizes, but she was so good, I had to bring her back. The last episode, Racheal Cook jumped on. We just left a lot of things on the table that we realized after the show that we didn't touch on. And she really comes back to the show. I just listened to it again, and just so many profound nuggets that she just drops, especially on the entrepreneurial mindset and whatnot. So I really appreciate her jumping back on the show and really reframing a lot of stuff that I had issues with myself. So I really enjoy listening to her and her words of wisdom all the time. She's fantastic. Racheal Cook is back. Let's jump into the show. Oh, before we do, the podcast course is coming out. It is basically done. I want to drop it at the end of the year. I also have some information that is going to be really exciting to share with you about me and Isaac Ho and what we're going to be jumping into in a little bit in the new year. So let's jump in the show. Hey, Racheal, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be a return guest.
Yes, I do not have many return guests, so that just shows how awesome you did last time. So I'm really excited to share, and especially after we finished the show last time, we had spoken briefly after the show off the air, and it was just like, we need to do this again. I felt like there was almost a cliffhanger last time when we ended with this concept of entrepreneurial poverty, and I thought it was really powerful. I know you touched on it for like 3 to 4 minutes in the last show, but it's such an important thing that I think entrepreneurs should be aware of, and being aware of it actually just helps us deal with it a little better. So if you could just refresh the audience's memory about who you are a little bit, and then we're going to just definitely dive into that.
Perfect. Well, welcome everyone. If you did not catch our last conversation, then make sure you go check it out, because it was a really, really good one.
Yes.
But I'm the founder of the CEO Collective and the host of the Promote Yourself to CEO podcast, where I work with women entrepreneurs who are scaling sustainable businesses. And this is the final iteration. I won't say final, who knows? This is the current iteration of my business. I've been in business for 15 years. And I started my business as the Yogipreneur, where I specifically was working with yoga, wellness, and holistic health providers to grow their businesses. But over 15 years, that has continued to evolve. And it's continued to evolve because I started getting into the research of what was happening for small business owners, and specifically women small business owners. And that's where I started seeing what I call now entrepreneurial poverty, where I would see all of these women who were starting businesses with the intention of, I'm going to do work I love. I'm going to be able to make more money because I'm able to control how much money I can make. I'm going to have more flexibility. I'm going to have more freedom. But then those things don't happen. And I started to wonder why. I started to wonder, why are so many entrepreneurs out there not just struggling with the poverty of money, which is what most people think about, but they're actually burned out. They have no time. They really have traded in a 9 to 5 to work 24/7.
Yeah, and you did provide us with some horrifying statistics last time. Do you remember those stats? And if you can share it with us
Yeah.
again?
Well, when I got into the numbers of all of this, I started realizing that despite the fact that women-owned small businesses make up 44% of small business in the United States, these stats are US based, they only generate 4% of small business revenue, which blew my mind. When I learned that, it completely blew my mind. I was like, how are we almost half of small business owners, but only making 4% of small business revenue? And so I dug in even deeper. And the majority of women-owned businesses are making less than $50,000 a year in gross top-line revenue. That's 75% of women-owned businesses are not making more than $50K a year. And that might be okay as like if that was your take-home salary and maybe you were working as a teacher or something. But as a business, you've got to take out your taxes, your expenses. You're lucky if you're bringing half of that home. And only 12% were breaking the six-figure mark. For all the hype out there about having a business that is making $100,000 a year, there's not that many. There's really only 12% who are making that much and only 3% who are crossing the seven-figure mark. So I've really kind of made it my mission, one, to unpack why is this happening? What is the disconnect? What is going on here that is holding so many women-owned businesses back? And of course, when you dig into the numbers even more, I mean, the numbers are even worse for minority women, for women of color, for LGBTQIA women. We don't have a ton of data about that, but I mean, in the world of women-owned businesses, I'm a white middle-aged woman, and those are my numbers. Everyone who's not a white woman, those numbers are going to skew lower. And so I started to realize that a lot of what we are being told for business is not actually helpful for women. It's just not helpful for the circumstances, the responsibilities, and the way that we truly want to run our businesses. So we have to start thinking outside of kind of the norm if we're going to break free from that.
So what do you think is a major thing that's contributing to that, or to those statistics specifically?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that holds women back is being in an employee mindset versus an entrepreneur mindset. And when you're in an employee mindset, it very much is a, 1-to-1 ratio here, as in, I will go do this work for you and you will pay me for this product I created or this hour of my time or what have you. So it's a very 1-to-1 relationship. There's no leverage and there's no scale there. And when there's no leverage or no scale, when you're basically a freelancer employee type of person, you have a hard time as a business owner, because we all are going to come up against days where we're sick, our kids are sick, we want to go on vacation. But if you are building a business around a dollar per hour mindset, that employee mindset, then it does not take long. It only takes one small emergency to massively impact your business. It only takes one small emergency to put you out of business. And we saw that a ton over the last few years.
Mm-hmm. So is that where the concept of like maybe getting a team and really focusing on scaling really comes into play?
I think scale is a tricky word because I think it's been kind of used a lot more than it needs to be. I don't think everybody needs to quote unquote scale a business. I think the first thing when you're going into business for yourself is to think about, what kind of business do I want to run and how do I want this thing to look in the future? So for example, when I started my business, I had just had newborn twins and I knew that there was no way I could work enough hours to do a dollars per hour model, not if I was going to be a caregiver for these two new babies and take care of my own chronic health problems and be available to support my elderly parents. I knew that I would need to start thinking early on in my business about how do I make sure that I can get paid even if I'm not there. So right away, that changes the conversation about how you're going to structure your business. And I think more business owners need to think in this way. How can I go from one person paying me for one thing to many people paying me for one thing?
So what would you suggest for health coaches to develop that kind of business model? Have you seen anything out there with the ladies that you've worked with of successful health coaches who've been able to implement that strategy?
So many people out there have gotten incredible ideas going. So I think one thing is, when we look at how most of us start, if we're a health coach, if you're a personal trainer, if you're a yoga teacher, a lot of times it comes down to offering one-on-one. So you're working with that individual person, or you're working in like a class or a small group setting. Those are both great ways to get started. And the reason I love starting businesses this way is because you learn so much when you are, toe to toe with the people you're working with, when you're actually in it with them. You learn so much about how you can get them results. You learn so much about where they get stuck and what their hangups are. So if you're a health coach, how many times are your clients going to get stuck or self-sabotage or fall off track or go into a shame spiral because they had a cookie, right? Mm-hmm. Those are important things to learn because there's a difference between learning it in, whatever certification program you're getting and actually working with a client through those things. So I think that's incredibly valuable. But there does come a point where your calendar is booked. You've already hit the top end of your rates. And you got to start thinking about other things you could potentially do that would allow you to continue to grow your business without you having to work more. I think the secret here is coming up with your own processes and your own intellectual property, your own way of doing the thing that you do that can be replicated. Because if you are required, because every person you work with is a unique little snowflake and, they have to have everything custom tailored to them, that's inherently not very scalable. But if you have a signature process, if you can take somebody from start to end and solve a very specific problem, that can be duplicated. And if it can be duplicated, it can be duplicated in multiple different ways. It could be duplicated not just one-to-one, but it could be duplicated in small groups. It could be duplicated in an online course. It could be duplicated in a book. It could be duplicated in a weekend. There's so many different formats that could take. And as you start looking at scaling your business, when you have a proven rinse and repeat process you can take people through, that means you can also teach other people how to deliver that process. So now you could certify other people in your methodology. You could have people who are now running those classes and running those workshops or working with those clients. So I think that's really the secret, is to not just think about everything you do as like, oh, in this class, I'm going to do this, or in this session, I'm going to talk about this. You're taking everything kind of as it comes at you and instead say, okay, what is a common denominator here with the clients that I'm working with, the ones who I really love and I'm getting great results for? What's going on that I can turn into a process that can serve more clients just like this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's absolutely the best formula that I've seen anyone who's really made it in the health coach space do, is really that replication system where they don't have to be right in the weeds and helping people, holding their hand constantly, because it's just like you only have but many hours in a day and a week. It just doesn't work, and burnout is inevitable.
Well, exactly. And I think you have to be crystal clear about who you're serving and what you're doing differently. Because the truth is, there are a million people becoming certified like all the time.
Right.
As a health coach, as a yoga teacher. I mean, I used to joke, I don't know anybody in my friend group who doesn't have some sort of yoga teacher certification. Like we've all got them.
Yeah.
And so you have to stand out. And so a great example, one of my clients, Dee, her business is a Boss Body Revolution. And she has grown this to a 7-figure health coaching business because she's South Asian and she specifically markets to Desi and South Asian women and says, hey, if you don't want to give up your cultural foods, if you don't want to just eat broccoli and chicken, then come to us. We can help you achieve your health and weight loss goals eating your cultural foods. Mm-hmm. Now that's powerful, right? Because it instantly in the market separates what she does, what her company, Boss Body Revolution, does. She has a whole team of coaches working directly with clients. And because they have this really clear understanding of who they're here to serve, and they have their own process to help those clients, she can continue to hire and train new coaches, indefinitely, basically, as long as she can continue generating the demand for that offer.
No, that is also a great idea and really shows that, part of the business journey is really just being yourself and take advantage of who you are. And in that case, that she was taking her cultural identity and really making it something that can identify in such a broader way. So that's really a great example.
Yeah. I mean, I have so many different businesses that I work with who find that specific niche or specific problem, right? And in this case, that was a very specific problem to a very specific person. Right. I have other clients who, I mean, obviously I work with a lot of women. That's my primary thing. And I have a lot of women who are in the health coaching space, who are physical therapists, who are yoga teachers, and they find that there's a special segment of postpartum moms. Like postpartum moms have a very, very specific need, especially if they have ended up with something called diastasis recti. So one of my clients, Catherine Middlebrooks, she owns BRB Yoga, and she came up with an entire process to help women who have just had a baby and they had diastasis recti, that separation between the abdominal walls, the abdominal muscles. She had come up with a whole process through yoga to help them heal that and get their core back together again without needing surgery. Well, she was able to turn that into an online course and deliver that 100% without her. Mm-hmm. That only comes from having clarity around what is the problem I'm solving and who is the person I'm solving it for. Is there a market for that? Are there enough people there who will say, oh, yes, this is the exact problem I'm having? But I think that's the key, is finding the specific problem and being willing to go really, really, really deep into that problem.
Oh, I love it. Great. 2 excellent examples, and definitely taking notes here feverishly, because I think those are great concepts, especially, what's the problem we're solving and who are we actually doing it for. So that's something that I always try to refocus, especially for myself. And I think it's very, very useful. So
well, and I have one more example for you that's not a woman. Are you ready?
Yes.
Well, it's my brother-in-law. It's my brother-in-law, Dale. He is here in Richmond, Virginia, and Dale has been into the world of bodybuilding for a while. And so he started his journey becoming a trainer for others who want to go to a bodybuilding competition or a physique competition. I know there's like different levels. Anybody in that world, I'm not an expert here. All I know is Dale's very strong. But when he started working as a personal trainer and then realized he wanted to train other people who wanted to go into those competitions, he actually found a secondary side business he could offer, because as a personal trainer, again, there's only so many people you can train before your calendar is just not manageable. But he realized there's a couple parts of preparing for a competition. One is what you do in the gym. The second is what you do in the kitchen. And so he started a secondary business that parallels perfectly with his training business, and he calls it Lean Chef Meal Prep. So he actually does meal prep for all of his training clients. And each week he shows up with a cooler bag full of all of their meals prepped, and they are weighed out by whatever the prep plan is they need to get ready for competition. And that was interesting because as he started rolling that out, suddenly more and more people who maybe they weren't training with him, they saw this offer and they were like, oh my gosh, I need this. And it's become another way to just look at, here's the people I'm serving. What are the problems they're having? How can I get them the results? He was already helping them in the gym. It was all about helping them with the food. And the best part is, Omar, he did not do the food himself. He found a friend who's a chef, works and does small stuff around here, and said, can I hire you for a day a week to come they found a commercial kitchen space to prep all of these things. We'll put together all these meals and the next day I'll deliver them. And it's a 2-day-a-week business that solves the problem and gets their clients the results they're looking for.
Oh, that's great. Another gem. Yeah, no, these are great ideas. I'm glad that you're sharing it because I always try to help health coaches expand their potential businesses because, again, I guess, we get out of the certification and it is really just, get a client, get a group going, and it's really narrow. And it's great to hear stories that are so expansive and that people are just taking advantage of these ideas and issues and they're just making a wonderful business out of it. So definitely thank you for that. I do want to touch on something because I think we're recording this right before midterm elections. I'm not sure exactly when this is going to come out, but a lot of people are concerned about just the direction of the economy specifically. And you have said that it's basically women suffer during a recession more than men. Why is that?
Yeah, when you look at the research about what happens during economic downturn, women business owners in general tend to be a little bit more conservative in their management of their business. Not politically. I don't mean that politically. But what I mean is they tend to cut back on spending. They tend to cut back on their maybe advertising budgets or marketing or what have you. And there's good and bad about that, right? I would say there's actually a huge amount of opportunity in any recession. In any downturn, there's always opportunity. In fact, research also shows that more millionaires are born out of recessions than any other time because they're taking advantage of those opportunities and then they're able to continue to grow through it. I think for small business owners, it is a lot easier to grow a small business when the economy is booming and people are freely spending money. But when people start cutting back on things, you just have to know your client well enough to understand, is what your service provides considered a nice to have or a must have? Is it a vitamin or a painkiller? If it's a vitamin, it's a nice to have. They'll do it because they know over time, this is going to help me in my life, right? But it's not necessarily urgent because if I don't do it today, I'll be fine. A painkiller offer is one that's, this is the Vicodin that you need when you just got really, really seriously hurt, right? You need it right now. It is urgent. And when we go into a downturn, usually the things that are considered the vitamin, the nice to haves, they start to get cut from people's spending. And this is where a lot of small business owners get scared because they start thinking, well, people aren't spending any money. That's not true. People are always spending money. Okay. So don't make decisions about other people's wallets. People are always spending money. They just are being a little bit more discerning about what they're spending their money on. And if you can continue to show up and provide incredible value and meet people exactly where they are, you will still find that people will spend money with you. The challenge is you may have to do some more marketing and get in front of more people because of the fact that a lot of people are going to have a change in their spending patterns. That just means you need to ramp up the marketing instead of slowing down the marketing.
What's interesting you said about the vitamin versus the painkiller is that health coaches, and I'm not speaking to all health coaches because I know that a lot of health coaches get their clients in moments of crisis, but I think I would say the majority of us would say that we're getting a lot of clients in the mindset that it's a preventative kind of thing.
Sure.
How do we navigate that to entice our potential clients that they need this right now?
Yeah. Well, I think, it's hard when you get people in crisis, because that's that's such a tough time to get people to make real lasting change. At that point, there's a lot of beliefs that they've had that they have to undo, and that makes the work really challenging, right? But unfortunately, often most people, especially when it comes to their health, don't make major changes unless there is a health crisis that they're faced with, or that someone they know personally is faced with. Those are the biggest instigators for people reaching out and starting to believe that they should do something with their health, is to avoid pain. And the second thing would be people who are naturally on this, like they already have the belief that their health is important, right? That's not a belief you have to change. They already have the belief they need to eat well. They already have the belief that they need to take care of themselves and have maybe some mindfulness practices, etc. Those are the people who are not doing it to avoid pain. They're doing it for a different reason. And usually it's around feeling good, right? So when people are buying something, it's usually either to experience more pleasure or to avoid the pain. The vitamin are the people who already have the belief that their health matters and they want to feel good. They want to feel better. They're like, if this is good, I want it to be even better. If I feel this good at 40, I really want to feel this good at 65. Their thinking is different than the people who got to the point where they're in a crisis situation and now they've got to do, a 180 to get their health on track. The people who are trying to avoid pain, they have a lot of belief shifting to do. And that's the difference when you're doing your marketing. If you're marketing to people, for example, the client I talked about who helps with diastasis recti, that's painful. That's postpartum moms. It's a pretty narrow window where they'll probably identify that that's them. So that's definitely I want to avoid the pain. But the other client I have who is working with South Asian women and they want to eat their cultural ethnic foods, that's to have more pleasure. That's so they can continue to do what they want to do. So I think if you can tap into that, it'll make it easier. And the thing is, you want to understand what you're selling, and then how can you really, really paint the picture for what that looks like for those people.
Okay. No, that's very, very interesting, because again, that's one of the things that all health coaches do have to deal with. And, since we're talking about recession, possible downturns, I know that you have a feeling that we could basically crisis proof our business as well. What do you suggest that we do?
Yeah. Oh, this is a big one for me. I did a whole episode on the podcast, Promote Yourself to CEO, about this too. And it's funny because I never thought I'd have to talk about crisis stuff until the last few years. And then I sat down and just wrote out a plan. Here's what I would do if we're looking at a crisis. One is get a handle on your money. Get a handle on your money. I know this is not fun for a lot of us to dig into our bookkeeping or to finally figure out how much we spent and how much we make, but get a handle on your money, because you want to, going into a recession, to have a reserve of cash that will get you through a few slow months. I think this is one of the biggest things that we don't talk about very much as small business owners. Like in the personal finance space, you hear all the time, like, you need an emergency fund. Business owners don't talk about that. Their emergency fund is go make more sales. But what if sales are slowing down because, something's happening in the economy? You've got to have an emergency fund for your business reserves set aside. And the easiest way to get started with that is to review your money, review your expenses, cut expenses you don't need to have. Often I find we have these little hidden expenses in our business that we just forget about. And when money's flowing, it doesn't matter if you're paying an extra couple $100s a month on random tech subscriptions. But when you need to be more aware, it's time to get a handle on that. So this is a great time to review your expenses. This is a great time to look at your pricing. We've had a ton of inflation this year. If you have not had a price increase this year, you are making less money than you made the year before. So I told all of my clients, if you have not done a 10% price increase, then you are making less money than you did last year. If you didn't do a 20% price increase, then you aren't making more money. Like you have to do more than that in order to grow what you're doing. So now is a great time to reevaluate your prices as well. And those two things will help you make sure that your cash flow is as positive and as profitable as it can be. And then you can start putting some of that aside in a business reserve. I like having at least a 3-month business reserve. More if you have a business that's over, let's say 250,000, you might want to have a 6 to 12 months. If you have employees or anything like that, more. But if it's you just getting started and you're under 250,000 a year, you need at least 3 to 6 months in that business reserve account.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I know that popped into my head automatically when you talk about a price increase in a market that is potentially dangerous to, at least in my mind, that to lose the customer possibly. Is there any real reality to that?
So price increases are part of being in business, right? Think about the last year. There have been huge price increases that have impacted every person. It's gas prices are always on the news. They've gone up. Food prices are always on the news. They've gone up. So price increases are part of business. And I think often entrepreneurs get too intermixed with what it means. So first, stop correlating price with you as an individual or the value you bring to the table, right? Those things are not to be enmeshed, because that's when you get into a lot of really messy mindset stuff. I have found that if you increase your prices, will you lose clients? Yes, no, maybe so. There's no way of knowing. But let's say you increase your prices by 20% and 20% of your clients leave. Well, the math plays out that you're still making the same amount of money, but now you've gotten back 20% of your time. So the next time you bring in new clients, they're all coming in at that new rate.
I love the reframe.
Yeah. So it's not that you have to be scared that people will leave. Yes, some people will leave, but the people who are the most price sensitive often, especially when it comes to health coaching, like when people work with a coach, they're choosing someone because they connect with that person on some level. There's a level of trust there. There's something that connects them. It's a relationship, right? So when you're in a relationship with somebody, if a client trusts you and has been working with you and has seen results with you, if you say, hey, next year I'm increasing my prices 20%, that client is not likely going to say, oh, okay, that's a 20% price increase. Let me go shop around for another coach and see if I find someone who I trust and I like and I get along with as much as this one. That generally doesn't happen if you truly are taking great care of your clients and have built great relationships with them. So I tend to not stress about that. I really don't. I'm like, the people who are instantly going to go, oh, I can't believe you raised your prices. Then I'm just going to be sorry. That's the cost of, what it takes for me to do my business these days. And I hope you go find somebody that does fit the budget that you have. But remember, there's always a client for every budget. There's always a client for every budget.
Well, listen, I think that's wonderful advice. And I think I usually said I got to keep you for 30 or 40 minutes. And we're kind of always in that zone. We just keep on rocking and rolling. But I guess to end, if you could just kind of talk about just how did you develop that mindset of abundance? Because that's really what you're actually preaching right now. And it's a perspective on money that I think can be lost on health coaches at times.
How I got this mindset of abundance, I would say I have an unfair advantage in that I was raised by 2 entrepreneurial parents. And when you're raised by 2 entrepreneurial parents and the mindset in your whole family is, I have control over the money coming into our family, it really changes you at an early level. So just for anybody who has kids, you are giving your kids this mindset when they see you say, I can always go make more money. That's my superpower, is I can always figure out how to go make more money. If someone said to me today, you need to go make $50,000, I'd be like, no problem. And I could come up with exactly how I would do that and execute and make that happen. And one of the things that happened for me early on, I actually really credit my dad for this, because when I got started in my business, I had worked with my dad in my dad's business since I was probably 12. But one of the things he challenged me to, because when you first get started and it's suddenly yours, it feels a little bit different than when it was someone else's. But I would get into kind of a dry spell, and I was like, Dad, what's going on? I don't know what to do. I'm talking to people, but people aren't signing up. And he would give me these little challenges. He's like, no, you can get people, you can continue to build a business. The math always works. It's a numbers game. And so he would give me these challenges, like, have you made a list of 25 people who you had calls with in the last 6 months, reached out to them and made another offer to them? No, I haven't done that. So I basically was challenged, because my dad was a good mentor for me in that way. He would always say, like, brainstorm 25 ways you can do that. Brainstorm 10 ways you could do that. Even when I was a kid and I wanted something. So I was a musician my whole life, and I played French horn, and I wanted to buy a French horn, which is a very expensive instrument. It's like $4,000 or $5,000. And my dad's like, okay, you come up with the plan and figure out how you're going to make the money to go get this instrument. And I did. I made the money in like 18 months in high school to go buy that instrument. And so I think practice of that, of saying, like, let me brainstorm how many ways I can make money, or how many people I can talk to, or how many things I can do to make this happen. It is kind of like, as you practice it, it just becomes a really natural thing. And when it's natural to think, well, it doesn't really matter what happens, I can always figure out how to make more money, like, that changes everything, because now I've already won the game, right? Like, I don't have to play with my business. I've already won the business. Now I get to play with stuff like this, with having conversations and other things.
I love it. You definitely had the cheat code when it comes to that, because I think that's one of the most important things to have when you engaging in any business. It's just having that mentality that there's a way and it can be done, and there's plenty of opportunities out there for you, is really truly the key to, I guess, any kind of business venture and life in general. So I love it. I'm glad that you were able to share that as well.
Yeah. And I hope anybody, by the way, anybody who has kids and you want to start changing this mindset for your family, start challenging them like this. My son said to me, I want an Xbox. And it's like $500 for an Xbox. I am just like, holy cow, this is so ridiculous. But he came up with a plan. He's like, I'm going to go mow lawns. I'm going to go walk dogs. I'm going to do this and that. When I built out my office, he came in and he would clean my office, and he would, put together the new tables that showed up, and he made the money. And now he knows, hey, if I want to make any money, here's a list of things I'm capable of. And he knows how to go knock on our neighbors' doors. He knows how to print out flyers. Imagine what would change for your kids if they went into the world knowing they can always take care of themselves.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful blessing that you were given to him, because, yeah, like that says, being self-sufficient is, I get, honestly, every parent's dream, right? You want your kids to be able to survive on their own. And when that's instilled in them at such a young age, it doesn't matter what the economy is actually doing. And you don't need to look for someone to give you a job. You can just make it happen on your own. So love it, love it, love it.
Awesome.
So thanks again for coming back. You are, again, a fantastic guest and just a wealth of knowledge. So can you please tell us how to keep up with all the good stuff that you're doing, your website, your social media handles, of course, your podcast, anything that we can keep abreast of what's going on in your world?
Yeah, the best place to continue following me is the podcast, Promote Yourself to CEO. If you like this conversation and you want to deep dive into all of the things that I think about all day long. It's Promote Yourself to CEO. There's hundreds of episodes, and I've already been working all of next year's content. It's going to be incredibly helpful for health coaches, that's for sure. And then you can come find me at Promote Yourself to CEO is at theceocollective.com. And when you go there, I really encourage you to go download the Get Paid Calculator. I think this is one of the best tools we've ever created for any entrepreneur who really needs clarity on what does my business need to generate in order to pay me for the lifestyle I really want. And it even will help you reverse engineer the pricing of your offers, of your services, so that you can make sure that that pricing, that the maths, and that you can actually make that revenue goal happen.
Yeah, definitely run and get that. That's an awesome tool. I forgot to mention that in this particular podcast, but you did mention it last podcast. I took a look. It's really good. So I hope everyone takes advantage of that. Racheal, thanks again so much for being on the show. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. If you did, jump over to iTunes and leave a rating and or review. It goes a long way in helping get this message out to our fellow health coaches and people in our industry. Also, if you can, jump over to my website, omarcumberbatch.com, where I give out a lot of freebies, including my 5-day sugar challenge for people who are having issues with sugar. And also for health coaches, I have the book, Hidden. It's the 6 not so obvious ways to get your clients unstuck. Have a great day.